Thank you for taking the time to learn more about workplace safety. We're glad you're here. First things first, if you haven't taken the Fundamentals of Fall Protection course, we strongly recommend that you take it before proceeding through this course. With that being said, over the next few minutes, I'd like to fill you in on what's coming up in this online course on fall protection for roofing. Overall, this course will take about 2 hours to complete. It's divided into 5 modules, each covering a different aspect of fall protection as it relates to roofing. This course is designed to ensure you have a solid foundation to build or manage your own fall protection program, or begin using fall protection on the job. It's not designed to be a replacement for your company's fall protection training, as it does not meet all requirements. However, we recommend that you use this course as a supplement to enhance certain aspects of your training program. For your convenience, each video in this course is available on our website and our YouTube channel. We interviewed knowledgeable users of fall protection as it relates to roofing to provide an opportunity to present this information to you. We begin by discussing common hazards and why fall protection is important for roofers. We cover the basics of selecting the right equipment for the job, proper usage, inspection, maintenance, and training. Once you've completed this course, there are 4 other courses in the Fall Protection Suite to choose from. These are Fundamentals of Fall Protection, Fall Protection for Construction, Walking Working Surfaces, and Ladder Safety, which we highly recommend you take ladder safety in conjunction with this course.
Our company safety policy is very thorough. It's evolved over the years. I mean, it started just pretty basic stuff. A lot of stuff we've taken from OSHA, from other roofing contractors that we've talked with over the years of what we liked, what we don't like. And then we're very strict, and then we'll fine tune our policy. So we always try to be stricter than OSHA's laws, just to be kind of a step ahead. And for us, I don't like to have any gray areas. I'd rather not be, hey, you can use fall protection here, but not over here. Granted, now the law is all-time or full-time fall protection. Our written policy is very thorough, and we want it to be as clear as possible for the employee, because we really want them to understand it. We want them to be able to, one, follow our policies, but ultimately be safe. That's our whole goal behind all of it, is have, our employees be safe every day. We have a management team within our company, so we can, all the leads get together and we talk and we bounce ideas off each other, what works, what doesn't work, and that's with everything in our business. But safety is always a big topic. And I can sit in my office and read a book and go on a website and go, hey, this looks awesome, but the crew's going, no, that's just not gonna work. It's not realistic out in the field. So input from the crews is very, very important to us, because that's where it's getting used. And we want it to work, not just, look cool on a website and go, wow, this is awesome, but you get it out there and it doesn't work. So yeah, getting input from them on a regular basis with everything that they're dealing with is very important to me, because that's where it's going to be most effective. Our safety policies have changed over time just by getting better, by new products coming out, different types of fall protection systems that are more safer and easier to work with. And so it just kind of naturally changes yearly, and it'll probably change next year too, depending on what we learn we think's the weakest link and how can we improve on it. So it's always going to change, with the components that we use. But as far as for us, we're 100% tie off at all times, period. So, that's pretty clear and cut and dry, and that's not going to change. It's just going to be, what tools we want to use. Well, I think anybody that's worked on a roof, you understand that the entire roof's a hazard. When you're up there on a slope, I mean, you can slip on something, you can step on your rope and put you on your back, and here you are sliding down the roof. And so there's a lot of obvious hazards. I mean, one, being so high up on some cases, having skylights, open windows, if you remove them to put a new one on, it's a hazard to fall in the home. Rotted wood, when you're tearing off a roof, the unforeseen stuff that you don't see, you tear off the shingles, next thing you know, you got delaminated plywood, and guys will step through. That's happened to us multiple times, where guys, luckily haven't gone all the way through, but you'll scrape your leg or bruise yourself pretty good. But I think everything on a roof is hazardous. I mean, once you step off that ladder, or I should say, once you step on that ladder, you need to be paying attention and ready for anything.
We had a kid fall in Seaside, and he fell about 45 feet. He was 30 years old. You know how long it took to ruin the rest of his life? Probably less than 2 seconds. and they don't do that math. This kid fell a long way, broke a lot of bones, but less than 2 seconds, and it's all changed.
Metal roofs are probably the most prone for accidents because of the sharp edges and having to cut and detail with those. And the slip hazard on metal roofs is a lot more, is a lot higher for slips on metal roofs. When it comes to the slip hazards, it's really a hard thing to work with. You can't really do much. They do have some shoes that have a kind of a felt pad on the bottom of them that help with that a little bit, but when it gets really dusty in the summertime, it really makes it hard to work on. So really just planning your work so that you're not having to go back over things is really key. Giving the employees gloves so that they can cut and work around the metal and minimize the chance of cutting their hands and fingers is really a critical point with that too. And learning proper methods of cutting, because there are right and wrong ways to cut metal. And if the employees learn the right way, then that can help reduce a lot of risk as well. As well, we look at the heat in the summer months, really are a critical time to watch out for heat exhaustion, as well as dehydration with the crews working. So that is one of the things that we go over in our safety meetings a lot, starting in May, June, July, August. We go over that, things to look for with heat exhaustion, things to look for with dehydration, making sure the crews are taking their breaks so they can hydrate themselves. We've actually gone through steps where we provide the electrolyte little pouches that they can add to their water to make sure they're getting the electrolytes and the water they need. When it comes to working on the roof with the different materials, whether it's asphalt shingles or metal or tile or slate, there's different aspects for each one that you have to be careful of. Asphalt shingles, when it gets hot, they really hold the heat, can really, enable that dehydration and heat exhaustion to happen. They get hot, you can burn your fingers a little bit. The granules though are pretty rough, and so you can actually, you lay enough shingles, you can actually wear through your skin. Putting those down. Wintertime when they're cold, they're stiff, they're rigid. They can, if the wind starts blowing, I have been on roofs where the wind will actually grab the shingles and start popping them on you. So one of the things that we also look at as far as the safety of a job is the power lines. If there's a power line that's running right up close to the roof, or if it runs across the roof, if it's anywhere one of our employees could actually touch it or bump into it, then we have the power company come out and they put their protective shrouds over the line. So really all aspects of roofing have an inherent danger to them. It's just making sure you get set up to give your employees the best safety practice possible.
Fatal work injuries. In 2017, 91 roofers died on the job. Of the 91 fatal work injuries, 82% were due to slips, trips, and falls. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Accepted claims. In 2017, there were 5,780 resolved claims in Oregon that were due to slips, trips, and falls. The average cost for these claims was $23,570. Oregon Department of Consumer and Business Services. Accepted claims. Below are a few categories of accepted disabling workers' compensation claims from Oregon between 2013 to 2018 due to falls to a lower level. 2,258 from ladders, 329 from roofs. Oregon Department of Consumer and Business Services. NIOSH Heat Exhaustion app. Scan the QR code to download the NIOSH Heat Exhaustion app.
When it comes to the equipment that we need for a job, for the safety equipment, price isn't really the factor per se. I mean, price is always a thing to take into account for, but usually we look at the installation, the ease of installation, the performance of the equipment, of course, making sure that it meets OSHA requirements, but then how the product is going to look if we're going to leave it on a house, on a residence, making sure that it's not going to just stand out like this Eiffel Tower that's going to be there forever. We want it to be low profile, but we want it to be accessible. We want it to be accurate, and we want it to perform the way that OSHA wants it to be. We buy fall protection buckets every week. because it's cheaper to buy the bucket than it is to buy the rope. And so we get a new harness every time, a new bracket every time. We'll take the rope out, give that to the employee, and we'll save the other stuff for another time. When it comes to your anchors, there are a lot of options to choose from. And again, you have to choose the right product for the right installation and with the right customer, the right project, because you don't want to put a 18-inch tall, standard flat roof bracket on a pitched roof, because that's not OSHA compliant. And so again, you got to match the product with the project and then with the customer. One of the other aspects of OSHA that we have used in our company to enhance our safety program is the pre-job consultations. So OSHA will send out a consultant to do a walk around of a job with you and to help you recognize hazards and what the appropriate fix for those hazards are. And so it's a very nice offering that OSHA gives for no charge, and you can work with that consultant to really bring about the best safety practice for that job, for your company, and for the public as well.
We'll break it again into commercial versus something residential. Commercial roofing, we see fall protection systems being used quite a bit, whether it's guardrail systems that go around the outside of the structure so that we're protecting everybody on the inside without having to put up active fall arrest equipment. We also see roofers more and more often working with building owners to put permanently in place anchor points and maybe permanently installed horizontal lifelines so that it protects not only the workers while they're doing the roofing, but we have fall protection for maintenance or other activities that would be happening once the roofing is done. We see counterweighted anchors that are brought up to the roof. There's also mobile anchors that I've seen that can go on the roof and provide anchor points for traditional fall arrest systems. I've seen a lot of fall restraint systems being used in commercial low slope roofing as well. So there's a lot of different things that I see our commercial low slope roofers using, and a lot of people are doing that fairly well. When it comes to the residential side of roofing is where there's a lot of work that can still be done and a lot of methods that can still be looked at. The perception, I think, in a lot of the residential roofing is, I'm only going to be here for a couple days. The systems that I would be putting in place are going to slow me down or actually increase the hazard to my workers rather than decrease the hazard. I also hear a lot from residential roofing that if I invest in the right methods and in the right solutions for my workers, now I have to charge more, and the people who are trying to get by and that aren't going to implement these same levels of protection are going to make it so that I can't compete in the marketplace. They're either going to drive the price down to where I can't get jobs, or they're going to cut into my profit margins so that I can't stay in business. The truth is that in residential roofing, we have to do a much better job across the board. We have to make sure that that industry is aware and educated about what the hazards are and what the solutions are. They have to know that there are solutions that can go on the roof that are temporary, that aren't going to penetrate the outside of the roof or cause a risk for water intrusion later on. There are very temporary disposable anchors that they can use on top of the roof. So when they're finishing and they're putting the ridge cap on at the end, they pound the anchors down and they ridge cap right over the top of them. Nobody knows they were ever in place, but as soon as there was any sheeting on top of that roof, they could have anchors that were put in place. There are systems that can go up on the ridge of a roof that hold more than one worker. You can have systems that can hold up to 4 workers off of one certified anchor point or engineered style anchor point. There are also horizontal lifelines that can be temporarily installed on a roof that allow workers to move back and forth across the roof, connect more than one worker, up to 2 workers, and use the ropes and rope grabs up and down as they're going from the eaves up to the peak, doing that roofing. Provides a lot of mobility. They can set up a fall restraint system very easily that way. If the companies that are involved in this residential roofing really take a look at what the roof is, how it's laid out, and plan for their fall arrest so that they don't have swing falls off the gable ends. There are ways to set these systems up so that maybe we're working in more restraint than we are in fall arrest. Could it take longer to do the job than it would without having any protection? Probably so. Is it going to mean educating themselves and their workers to the hazards and how to properly set their systems up? Absolutely. But it is definitely the right thing to do, because when we look at the injuries and the falls and the fatalities from falls from heights that people are falling from are right around that eave and ridge height on single level residential homes, which leads me to believe that we see a lot more falls off of the residential sector and a lot more injuries than we are really in the commercial side of things, where it's being policed a little bit more, where we have more safety professionals that are working in that area. In the residential side, we probably don't have the same level of safety professional in many cases, helping them and educating them to the hazards and how to do things correctly.
So on the residential roofing side of things, most of the work that we do is re-roofing. So it all starts off when our estimator, our consultant, goes out to the job. One of the first things he looks at is the roof itself, takes a look at the pitch, takes a look at the height, and then we will meet with the customer, kind of go over what they're wanting to do. And so our estimator will put that proposal together. As part of that proposal, he takes into account the time it's going to take to set up the safety lines, set up fall protection, tie-off points, whether we need to set up protection for the public, if it's a residential apartment complex, something like that, and you've got multiple tenants, then we will set up safety perimeters for the ground so that the public can't walk into those areas where debris is getting thrown. But then most importantly is when we set up for the crew, when the crew goes up on the roof and they set up their fall protection, put in those tie-off points. So that's all part of that estimating process that the estimator goes through. And then when we get to the job, to start the job, we will go over that same review again with the crew to make sure they know this is where we want the tie-off points, this is where you need to be a little bit more careful with the public. This is the customer's driveway. We want to make sure their cars get pulled out so that we don't have any chance of hitting anything there. And then setting up with the crew, and the foreman has the overall decision if there's something that the estimator might have missed, but we need to have it out there for fall protection, then the foreman gets that taken care of. The other aspect that we work with when it comes to general contractors with new construction are the pre-task safety plans that most general contractors require as part of their documentation. So before we start the job, we fill out what our safety plans are, and then the general contractor has a copy of that in his files. In that pre-task safety plan included typically is the fall protection methods that we're going to be using. They also review extension cords, power tools, anything that gets plugged in, having a weekly check of those. And so the pre-task plan, it can include as much as even parking, where you're going to park your vehicles. Pre-task plans typically include your HAZCOM, your data sheets for the materials that you're going to have on the roof, where that folder is going to be located at, or where that information is going to be located. So that is all part of that pre-task safety plan. So for us, the hazard analysis begins with the estimator or consultant. When he first goes out on the job, if it's a re-roof situation, he will conduct that first hazard analysis and have that as part of his estimate. And then as the foreman is working on the job, they will make adaptations or corrections as the job progresses and different hazards will show themselves. Because the more you look at a job, the more you'll find, the more potentials you'll find for hazards. So for us, we feel it's very important to start at the beginning, and then that continues all the way through the job. Weather can definitely play a huge factor in the hazard analysis with what's going on. When the estimator goes out, it might be a beautiful sunny day, and then the first day the crew shows up, there might be frost on the roof. At that point, the hazard analysis and the safety situations change. The foreman will make those corrections to make sure that everything is in compliance.
Well, I take my foreman out and then we walk around the buildings. We see all the hazards. We usually go and see what kind of equipment we're gonna need, safety, and all that stuff. And then I tell him what I think we're gonna be using, and then after that he tells me what he thinks is the best, because they are the ones gonna be working on the roof, because they're using that every day. So yeah.
Supervisors in our company play a huge role in ensuring safety with the crew. They've been trained by our safety director, and they know our policies inside and out, what's right, what's wrong, what we can and can't do. And so when they go to the job site to check on the progress of the job itself and talk with the homeowner, part of their checks are checking on safety, making sure that their anchors are set properly, that their ropes are hooked up, ladder safety, the whole gamut of safety items that we look at. And so there are eyes out there when our safety director can't be there. And if they do detect an issue, they're gonna change it with the crew right then and there. Say, hey, this is what needs to be done. And then they will report to our safety director to ensure that he knows what's going on, what crew it was, what employee was, not being safe. If it's a major issue, the supervisor will contact our safety director immediately and get out there, and he'll address the situation. But the supervisor will pull the guys off the crew to take them out of that safety hazardous scenario. We have a lot of crews, so the safety director can't get to every single crew every day. We definitely see the crews at least twice a week, every single one. But he'll grab 3 to 5 a day and go out and look at the entire job, all the safety when it comes to fall protection, to ladders, to where's our dump trucks and trailers placed, just the overall safety on the job. And he takes a lot of pictures. And then works with the crew if there are any issues, fix the problem right then and there. And then he puts together a full report with the pictures of what was good and what was needs improvement, and what discussions he did have with the crew and the employees. And then he emails this to me daily so I can review, and then we put together a plan at that point if one's needed.
When a worker finds a hazard on the roof, we empower our employees to take care of the issue right then. There's no reason to take the time to go tell somebody else and wait for that to get fixed. So we empower our employees. If there's a skylight that is, on the roof that was not noted, that needs to be covered up with a sheet of plywood, that employee right then will communicate to the foreman, but at the same time, he's going to get the sheet of plywood to replace that, or they are going to get that sheet of plywood to cover that skylight.
Every house is a little different, and so that's the big thing. Different than when you go to a factory, everything's the same. But when they show up to work, it's every day is going to be different. So what does the roof look, the pitch of it, where it's located, how many trees are around, power lines, all that kind of stuff. They've got to look at that each day because it's always changing. And then making sure that we can provide fall protection anchors where they need them and where they will be the most effective and not causing issues for them. So really kind of taking a look at the roof up front, getting ideas from the estimators, even if they notice something that's kind of tricky, that we have the time to put together plans before the crew shows up so that we can provide them with the assistance, with the support, with showing where these anchors are, maybe tricky parts of the roof that they need to know ahead of time. So that they can be well equipped and ready to start the job when they get there.
Ladder Inspection Form. A ladder inspection form is a valuable tool for identifying some of the hazards that are present when using a ladder. The benefit is you can also see if there are trends developing, like defective parts. If any defect or damage is found during the inspection, you must do the following. 1. Tag the ladder dangerous, do not use. 2. Repair the ladder immediately to original condition or destroy the ladder.
Single family homes like we have here today is pretty easy. We can kind of, make sure that we've got danger tape around to keep them out of the area. It's easy because they know what's going on. It's their house. We're actively taking care of what they've hired us to do. Where we have, real issues with that can be apartment buildings where there's lots of people coming and going. So we want to make sure that we always have restricted areas to keep them out of harm's way, but also so that they can get back and forth of their apartment. That's what they want to do. So making sure that we're not so rigid that they can't get in and out of their house, of their apartment. So we look at that, kind of put plans together depending on what we got concerning, and making sure that we do have a restricted zone that's clear. And so we'll put up the danger tape, cones, stanchions, and so forth to make sure that that's clear and they can easily see the path to their apartment.
Before we start the job, when doing tear off or even when we're shingling, we like to use the caution tape around the building or around the area where we are going to be working, just to get people aware that falling objects might be happening during the day. And then there's usually signs too that says men working above. We use that around the building as well.
When we are working in a multi-tenant complex or an apartment complex, what we'll typically do is we will post a warning sign on the windows of the doors that go out to the public areas that say work is being performed in this area. Please be aware of the crew, or caution signs or whatever we put on that warning label. What we've also done is we've also sent to those apartment complexes a letter that the property managers can then give to all the tenants, making them aware of a roofing project that's going to be happening so that they can be aware and look out for things. Because really what we're looking out for are the kids that are just running around having fun, and they like to come and watch people work on the roof. So we send those letters out to try and notify parents and that to watch out for their kids. In all aspects of roofing, you're going to have either a loading point or you're going to have a drop point, because you either have to get materials up on the roof or you got to get them off. And so in order to protect the public, what we will do is we will set up cones in a designated area with red danger tape so that the public at least is aware that there's something dangerous going on in that situation. It doesn't always stop people from walking through your hazard zone, but in those situations, if we're doing a drop, we typically have at least one employee on the ground that has a hard hat, that has a vest on, and then they will be watching to try and keep the public out of that danger area while material is either getting loaded or dropped in either case.
A hole is defined: a gap or open space in a floor, roof, horizontal, walking working surface, or similar surface that is at least 2 inches in its least dimension. A hole is talking about any opening in a horizontal surface. So when you're walking across the floor, if there is a hole in the floor, it is a hole. A skylight would be a definition or an example of a hole that is in a roof.
So when roofing homes, new construction or re-roof, tearing off an existing roof and putting a new one on, we come across skylights on a regular basis. In our area, majority of homes have, a minimum of 1 skylight and sometimes more than that as well. And so it's a big hazard, especially new construction, like what's shown here is the framers will frame the skylight curb is what it's called, so we can flash around it, then we put the new skylight on. But it's a huge hole going all the way down. It's a big hazard. And so what the law is and what we do is when those skylights are open, you gotta have a piece of plywood or something on site to where you can put it over the top, fasten it, and where it's marked hole that it's a danger so nobody will step into it. There's been a lot of injuries over the years where people, they don't do this, and they'll be walking backwards just not knowing where it's at, and they'll trip and fall, and some people have even died during this process. So it's really important to take the time and cover the holes on the roofs if it's new construction or even during a residential re-roof.
So if you're up there on that roof, the thing we want you to do is prevention. Okay, we always want prevention. The skylight covers, the anything you can do, the guardrail systems, demarcation, anything you can do to protect against those skylights is the very first. Temporary guardrail systems, like we said, block it off, make it so you can't get to it. Most guys just want to tie off and run around. But you remember, the thing about skylights is that you could tie off on this side, walk up to a skylight, you can walk up to it, you're fine. But once you walk around it and you're on the other side, you're no longer tied off. Okay, because if you fall back through, you're going down through. Okay, so you always have to be kind of treat it like a leading edge. You can go up to it, but you can't go around it. If you're gonna go around it, you have to replace your anchor. Owner that has a building that has a lot of skylights, I would tell them permanent fall protection system. That way a guy's hooked off, he's always hooked off. Those things start at one end and go all the way to the other. So we can wrap them through. They're cleated. So when you walk through and you've got the little, we call them travelers, the tie-up points, they just click right through. So you never have to tie off or untie.
One of the common things that we come across with roofing are skylights, or at least openings to let sunlight come in. Oftentimes on commercial buildings is where you'll find just the openings around the perimeter of the building so that those exterior windows can get some natural light. Residential or commercial jobs a lot of times have skylights as well, and those have their own fall protection hazards that you need to address. And so what we do is we will build or take a sheet of plywood and cover those skylight areas so that we can eliminate that risk of falling through either the opening or tripping and then falling through the skylight itself is a potential. And so by taking plywood and covering those holes or those skylights up is critical. And that is something that happens at the very beginning of a job. When the foreman gets to the job, they look on their material list, they look on the job sheet, they see there's a skylight, they know that they need to address that right away. So when they go up and get their fall protection installed, they will then take care of that skylight as well.
Holes and Openings Inspection Form. A Holes and Openings Inspection Form is a valuable tool for identifying and correcting some of the hazards that are present when working around holes and openings.
So when it comes to setting up your roof for your fall protection, you have to set up the anchors in ways that prevent your swing, your pendulum swing. So typically on a residential roof, you're gonna have more than one set of anchors installed because you can't put one 40 feet away and then be working over here, because if you swing, if you fall, all of a sudden your rope is way too long and you're hitting the ground. So you set up multiple anchor points so that you can adjust your rope, again, to have it at the proper length for what you're working on.
So as I start to walk 20 feet over there, what am I doing? I'm starting to walk up towards the peak again because I only have so much rope, right? So what do? Well, you know what they do. They grab yield, rope grab, and pay out 20 more feet of rope. Then they get over there and they fall. I don't care who you pray to in the morning. I don't care what you eat for breakfast. You ain't staying. You know why? Gravity. Gravity never stops. So what's it gonna do? It's gonna bring you right back to where? It has to bring you back to zero. It has to bring you to zero. There's no question, okay? The only problem is, the second biggest word I know, inertia. You started at A, you got to B, do you think you stop? No, you go to C, and you go back. We call it the pendulum effect. Happens all the time. Why? Because they don't want to move their anchor. It's too much of a hassle. So what we come up with is a couple of ideas. By the way, if you go 20 this way and 20 that way, you're 40, and if you're only 30 feet off the ground, you got more rope than you got air, so you're gonna hit the ground. We call that the splat factor. When you're up on a roof, if you're not gonna put a rat line up or a horizontal lifeline up, right? Take 4 or 5 anchors and put them up there, all the way across the roof. Hook off to this first anchor. Okay, that's your anchor point, right? But I need to work over on this side, and it's out of my swing fall, because we give you 30 degrees. From 0, we give you 8 to 10 feet. So put another anchor 20 feet. You got 10 from this one, 10 from that one, right? Then walk over to that anchor, pull a carabiner out of your pocket, put it in the anchor, and put your rope through it. Where's your new anchor? Right here. You can do that as far as you got rope, and then you just come back, but you're always tied off. And it gives them freedom, especially guys doing tear off. So it gives them freedom.
Swing fall. In order to limit swing, in the event a worker falls, workers should not go further than 30 degrees from the anchor point. Remember, always consult with your manufacturer's instructions.
I think any new residential house should have the roofer should automatically put in what we call ridge 1s and ridge 2s. They're just an anchor that go up at the ridge and just they're strapped, stainless steel strap. And then there's a little tiny D-ring on each side. So if you got somebody that's gonna go up there and do your Christmas lights, clean your gutters, they have somewhere to anchor off to. The other thing is, for a lot of the new commercial buildings, we're putting in permanent roof anchor systems. And bam, put it up there, there's always somewhere to tie off. But especially for a maintenance guy, going up there, maybe all he's gotta do is go clean, a scupper out. It's full of leaves and it's gaining water. So he's gotta go to the edge, So he just hooks off, takes his rope, lets it out, lets go, cleans it out, off he goes. And we have a lot of anchors now that if you have a $500,000 TPO roof, you think they're gonna let me put 40 screws in it? So we got water bladder anchors, and we got what's called an angel anchor. And the angel anchor is a set of weights. So, and they're mobile. We got carts now that are mobile. The only problem is, like with a cart, one of the carts, you gotta have a crane to get it up there. So, cause it's heavy, but it's mobile and it won't penetrate unless you fall. Again, the numbers, people don't do the math. The water bladder takes 100 gallons of water. A gallon of water weighs 8.2 pounds. That's 820 pounds of weight, dead weight, in a 6x6 area. You better make sure your structure can hold it. Because if it doesn't, it's going through and it's taking you with it. So, again, the numbers and the mistakes they make.
So when talking about fall protection anchors, there's a wide assortment of different brands, different styles, different designs. The ones that we typically use, these are our anchors that when we first start a job, we hook up, normally use duplex nails, and we install them per manufacturer's specifications. And that is very important on any anchor that you want to use and want to install, is that you always read the manufacturer's specifications prior to installing it. So guys are working on the roof, this is what we install, this is what we use during the whole roofing process. And then when we're done with the job, towards the end, we're roofing up to the ridge, we always leave a permanent anchor. And these are called hitch clips, which is what we currently use. And these install underneath the shingles, and then this is what's left on the roof, and then we remove these when we're done with the roof. And so what this does for us, when we come back to clean the roof, if we need to inspect something, this anchor's already set up for my guys to be able to set their ladder, walk straight up with their harness on, and clip in and not have to remove any roofing to set an anchor. And so this is just a standard practice within our company that we leave these on every single job. And again, when you install permanent anchors, ensure that you read the manufacturer's specifications when installing these.
So there's multiple types of anchors. You can anchor in different positions, depending on the roof that you're working on will kind of dictate the type of anchor that you need to use. We call them brackets. There's a multitude of options when it comes to tie-off. You've got hitch clips, you've got the full double-sided D-rings, you've got the single-sided D-rings, you've got the rafter brackets that you can attach, especially on new construction. Some of them are permanent, some of them are temporary. So it really depends on what part of that roof you're doing, if it's new construction or re-roof, whether the customer wants to see those safety devices left or if they want to have them taken off. We always recommend that the customers leave them, because whoever goes up on that roof has to be tied off. And so we recommend that they leave them there for future work. So when it comes to the installation of your roof anchors, again, you got to follow the manufacturer's guidelines. They will specify whether it needs to be 5/8 plywood with blocking underneath, or whether it needs to go directly into a rafter, how many fasteners, because based on the pull rating of that anchor, different fasteners are needed, different number of fasteners are needed, and so each manufacturer and each application is going to have its own requirements that you have to know, and you have to follow those specifications.
Peak anchors. Peak anchors are typically left in place after the job is done, so they can be used for future jobs. However, some models are meant to be temporary and reusable on other job sites. Decking anchors. Decking anchors in the roofing industry are often used on low-slope roofs. They can work as a single anchor point or be used in a horizontal lifeline system. Rotating retractable anchor masts. Rotating retractable anchor masts are most often used on sloped residential roofs. They allow the worker a large range of motion and helps to elevate the anchor point above the worker. Dead weight anchors. Dead weight anchors are commonly used in roofing work when you cannot hammer or drill into the surface. They are made of concrete, steel, or other similar heavy materials to provide anchorage.
So with the horizontal lifelines, the manufacturers of those types of assemblies will send you the entire kit that you need, as well as the assembly and installation instructions. And it's really important that you follow those instructions, because that's what OSHA looks back on. If they show up at your job site and you've done some rinky-dink thing to make it work, they're not going to approve that. So you have to follow the manufacturer's products, installation procedures, because that's what OSHA is going to look back on as well. On a situation where you've got a long ridge and it's two straight sides, you can hook up a horizontal lifeline, a rope that's got two different rings on it, and you can hook up a couple of different people on that lifeline and not have to have multiple anchors across the roof. That is really a nice system to work with if you don't have a lot of valleys or hips that you have in the roof. If it's just two straight sides, that horizontal lifeline is a great option to go with. But again, you have to have the proper anchors to accommodate that system, which are different than your standard D-ring operations.
The horizontal lifeline stretches between two anchorages. When you connect a lanyard or rope grab to a horizontal lifeline, you can move about freely, thus reducing the risk of a swing fall. Horizontal lifelines can fail at the anchorage points if they're not installed correctly. For this reason, horizontal lifelines must be designed, installed, and used under the supervision of a qualified person.
The most critical thing that you have to really train employees on how to use are the rope adjusters, to make sure that they are constantly adjusting them to where the area that they're working, so that they can get to the edge of the roof but not go off, but so that when they get up on the roof, that they think they need to adjust the rope length so that they're not falling further than they need to. So if you're working on a 10-12 pitch especially, and if you slip, you don't want to fall all the way to the bottom of the roof before your rope really stops. But that's the most critical thing, is making sure that employees are adjusting their ropes and keeping them at the proper length. So in working on the roof, if someone's working on a 6-12 pitch, for example, we typically will have their rope adjusted to where the rope stops them at the edge. But you do have the lanyard that can still expand if they do fall. And so again, you have to take into relation how tall the person is that's working on the roof, how long the lanyard is, and what your distance from the roof to the ground is. So again, working in fall restraint really limits us, because it doesn't let you get very far before it stops you. And oftentimes we're laying out 10, 12, 20 feet ahead of us. And so having that fall arrest system adjusted to where at least the rope has stopped you from going beyond the edge, but that lanyard still does have that opportunity that you can fall off, but still catch you before you hit the ground. So one of the important things to keep in mind with fall restraint versus fall arrest with the 6-foot height is making sure that you limit yourself to just getting to the edge of the roof. You have to accommodate for your lanyard, for the shock absorber, and then the rope you have behind you for your fall protection. You have to make sure that the foreman is watching his crew to make sure that they are keeping their ropes tight, so that they don't have so much excess that if they fall off the roof that is 10 feet high, by the time you hit your shock absorber, then your 3-foot that you're going to extend anyways, you're going to hit the ground before anything works. So you have to make sure that you are taking into account your fall restraint, your fall arrest, to make sure that you're measuring that properly so the crews can be set up safely.
Rope adjuster. A rope adjuster allows a worker to move along a vertical lifeline, but engages and locks on the lifeline when the worker releases the lever. When using a rope adjuster, keep the following in mind. The rope adjuster must be compatible with the lifeline. The rope adjuster must be correctly attached to the lifeline, not upside down. Keep the rope adjuster as close to the anchor as possible on the lifeline.
So a parapet wall is part of that structural design of the building. It used to be that as long as your parapet wall had a height of 30 inches and a maximum of 18 to give you 48, you could do that. Or it could be 36 and 12 or 35 and 13. Now, OSHA is requiring a height of a nominal of 42 inches, plus or minus 3 inches is the allowance they give. So that nominal height of 42 inches now is the standard. You cannot count the width of the wall anymore in your measurement for your parapet wall for safety. As long as that parapet wall reaches a nominal height of 42 inches, then that will count as your fall protection, and you don't have to wear the harness, or you don't have to have a tie-off anchor, and you don't have to have a warning line if your parapet wall reaches that nominal height of 42 inches. So if you have a parapet wall and the height is only 30 inches, you're not tall enough to meet that nominal of 42, then you have a few different options. You can have a 6-foot warning line, which is set back 6 feet from the edge of the wall, and it has to be flags, rope, marking that area to give you that warning line. If you're gonna work beyond that, then you have to either have fall protection in place, or you can work with a safety monitor as long as that area is marked off in a 50 by 50 foot area. You can't just have a huge area and have the safety monitor walking along. Now, the safety monitor cannot have any tools in his hand, can't be carrying any equipment. We typically have our safety monitor wear a different colored vest so that they stand out. The policy for our company is we have one safety monitor to 2 workers. And that safety monitor doesn't do anything except watch those 2 employees work. They have to be within shouting distance, and they have to be eyesight. And so, but again, that falls in that 50 by 50 area to work in.
Parapet clamp guardrail. An often overlooked option, the parapet clamp guardrail can provide a temporary fall prevention system. The system is adjustable and, when set up correctly, complies with Oregon OSHA standards. Remember, always consult with your manufacturer's instructions. Residential guardrail system. While not as common as other options, guardrail systems can be used as fall protection on residential roofs. Remember, always consult with your manufacturer's instructions. Guardrails. Guardrails, over other options, when installed correctly, reduce the amount of human error inherent with other systems. Parts include top rail, mid rail, screens, mesh, intermediate vertical members, etc. They can also be combined with toe boards for falling object protection.
Next is safety monitor systems. The safety monitor system uses a competent person to warn roofers when they are in danger of falling. Since the safety monitor is responsible for recognizing fall hazards and warning workers about them, they are required to stay on the same walking working surface as the roofers and avoid doing any other work. The safety monitor system is available as a primary fall protection option for roofs that are 50 feet or less in width.
When we employ the safety monitor system is some of the work that we have to do outside of the safety line. So a couple of things that you can do there. You can be tied off. Sometimes that's very difficult because of the anchor systems that you have to have. And again, we're doing membrane roof. So having the safety monitor to keep an eye on those workers outside of the safety line is a way that we can do that, do it safely, and making sure that everyone stays that way, stays safe. So it's just another fall protection measure that we can use in those situations. Sometimes, you might see this, but it's not compliant, is they might say that they're the monitor, but they're also doing the work. And again, that's not compliant. They have to focus on safety of the other workers that's on that roof. And so when they get close to the edge, they're verbally talking about reminders, warnings, or physically going over and saying, hey, you're too close, can't be, that close, or hanging over the edge. Sometimes the workers get focused on what work they have to do and forget about those points. So a safety monitor is watching that constantly. They can't have any other activities on that roof. They're focused on the safety of the workers there, and that's it. So, and you can easily designate them too. They're usually wearing a vest, a safety vest, and so you can easily see what their job is.
Safety monitor. Safety monitoring systems for roofing work can only be used to protect employees on roofs that have slopes no greater than 212. They are not permitted on roofs more than 50 feet in width unless a warning line system is also installed to keep employees from coming too close to an unprotected roof edge.
The idea behind the warning line system is just to make sure employees are aware that there's an edge there. Once you get up to a certain pitch, you can't use them anymore because obviously it's not going to stop anybody from falling off, right? Just like in the term, it's a warning line. It lets them know, hey, there's an edge here. In case you were backing up and weren't paying attention, you need to stop and check your surroundings out.
Warning lines are a fall protection system that surrounds all sides of the work area, placed at least 6 feet from the edge, and are made up of supporting stanchions and lines such as rope, wires, or chains that are flagged with high visibility material.
The warning line system is not strong enough to prevent an employee from going over the edge like a guardrail system is, so it is the least preferred method and requires the greatest amount of supervision to ensure that it's being used correctly.
When it comes to warning lines, really the size of the job for our company is what dictates whether we use a warning line or whether we just go ahead and tie off. Because if it's a smaller job, it doesn't make much sense to have a 6-foot warning line when you've only got another 5 feet behind you. You might as well just tie off and work in that area. But if you've got a fairly good sized job, most of them are commercial, large job that you can put a flag system up and then have a big area to work behind, that usually works out best for us. So on a warning line, you are restricted to the slope of the roof. You can only use a warning line up to a 2-12 pitch. Anything below that you're fine, but anything above a 2-12 pitch, you have to go to the standard fall protection scenarios.
Warning lines. A warning line system is designed to warn roofers that they are near an unprotected edge. It consists of ropes, wires, or chains, and supporting stanchions that mark off the area where work can be done without other types of fall protection. It can only be used for roofing work on roofs that have slopes of 212 or less, vertical to horizontal. Warning lines. Those who do roofing work between the warning line and an unprotected roof edge must be protected with personal fall arrest systems, fall restraint systems, guardrail systems, safety monitoring systems, or safety nets. Warning line systems for roofing work where mobile equipment is being used must be set up at least 10 feet from an unprotected edge.
When I try to educate people on how to use harnesses, or in my orientation, I talk about, I try to touch on things that other superintendents don't touch on during the orientation, because a lot of these people who come to the Hoffman job sites have been to a dozen others in their career. And so I try to hold their attention by talking about something maybe they haven't heard about. And one of the things I do talk about is the straps that are on the side of a lot of harnesses over your hip area. If you do fall, you sit in that harness until somebody retrieves you. If you're in an area or somebody doesn't have a plan, doesn't know how to retrieve you, you could be sitting there for a while. It's going to take the fire department, if you're 200 feet off the ground, they have to be called, they have to arrive. You're going to wait there until they figure out how to reach you. You have minutes sitting in a harness while you're dangling there, and all the pressures on the inside of your thighs on that femoral artery until you start to develop a clot. And so developing a clot there is going to depend on if you have a blood disease, how healthy you are, you know, how much trauma you had when you fell. And so those straps right there are extremely important. I tell everybody that if you're gonna be wearing a harness, you want those straps there. Because if you aren't deploying those straps and you understand how to deploy it, hook it together and stand in there, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna get a clot. Now, the clot isn't the problem. The problem is when you get taken out of that harness and that clot gets let go out of that femoral artery and where it travels to. Because if it travels to your lungs, it can cause pulmonary embolism, or if it goes to your brain, it can cause a stroke, okay? And so it's extremely important. If people think just putting on a harness and tying off correctly is all they need to know, they're only halfway there. And falling in a harness is bad. Falling in a harness and having a stroke and having paralysis on the side of your body and losing your speech and changing your whole life, that's a big deal.
First man up is always a very challenging subject in fall protection. How do we get an anchor point up there? How do we establish a safe tie-off point for that first person so that they can then establish tie-off points for the people that are going to be coming after them? I've seen it done a lot of different ways. Probably the way that we recommend doing it most often, if it's available, is establishing that first anchor point out of some sort of a aerial work platform, a scissor lift, using a ladder to access that location, and then work safely to establish that anchor point. When establishing that first man up, you know, we definitely want the worker who goes up there to be doing nothing but establishing that anchor point, and establishing that anchor point for the workers that are going to be coming after, testing it, making sure that it is thoroughly going to meet the needs and requirements for whatever fall arrest system that they're putting on there. You know, we have an authorized person, competent person, and the qualified person. Our authorized people are going to be the people who are authorized to go do the work. They're authorized to use the equipment. Our competent person probably would be somebody that's setting up that first man up system in conjunction with, or maybe with the assistance of, a qualified person who is able to identify that structure as something that was sound enough and could support the loads that might be put into it should a fall occur. Once that qualified person has determined that the structure is going to be okay to tie off to, then we can have the competent person use the equipment, set the anchor point, and deem it safe for the rest of the workers that are going to follow behind them.
So at the completion of a job, the foreman has the final responsibility of removing the safety equipment that is temporary or is being removed from the job, so that we don't have people removing safety equipment and then still working on the job. So the foreman makes that final call when everything is completed. He will then walk around and he will remove, or he will assign one of his crew members to remove that equipment, and it works back towards the point of getting off the roof. And so that is, in our company, that's the way our policy works, is the furthest fall protection equipment gets removed first, then you work your way back. That way you can be tied off consistently as you're removing equipment, all the way back to the point where you are at that last one and you're minimizing your exposure to a fall hazard.
Roof ridge ladder hooks. Roof ridge ladder hooks can secure almost any straight or extension ladder to a roof. They can provide safer access when establishing your first anchor point. Remember, always consult with your manufacturer's instructions.
So when it comes to accessing a roof, there's multiple ways to do it. You can have your standard, the ladders extended up. You extend your ladder 3 feet above the eave edge. You secure the ladder to the building so that it can't move. You set it up at the proper angle so that it's not straight up and down. So setting up your ladder is the primary point of access. And you want to set it up in a place that has steady ground, that's level. You know, sometimes you'll see it where you put a ladder in a landscaping and one side sinks in the mud. It's not a safe access point. So you want to put those ladders in areas where it's safe, where it's solid, where it's level. And then on the roof, if it's a roof that has a pitch to it, you know, 512, 612, you can typically step onto the roof okay. You get up into the 7 and 8 and 10, 12 pitch roofs, you typically want to have a slide guard or something to be able to step onto so that you can be safely up on the roof and work from that way. But typically, most residential houses, you're setting your ladder up, you secure it to the building, and you make sure your extension of your ladder goes up 3 feet beyond the eave so that you're in compliance. And it also gives you something to kind of hold on to when you're stepping onto the roof or stepping off the roof onto the ladder at the same time. What I've seen where most falls happen is that step getting off the roof onto the ladder. For some reason, people are just not very comfortable stepping that way. And so making sure that the ladder is secured is really critical. In some roof applications, you will have what's called a roof hatch. It's a roof access point that you can climb up from the inside of the building. You can open the handle and it opens up the roof of the hatch. And so that gives you a good access point. Most of the time you'll find those on commercial jobs. So part of our policy in our company is that if we have a roof hatch on a job, we set up a perimeter that goes around that hatch approximately 6 feet, at leaving one point open for an access point. But what we'll also do is if we're gonna be on the job for the day, nobody's gonna be working in that area, we'll close the hatch so that we don't have that open exposure at all. And so getting out of those roof hatches sometimes is the most dangerous part. If it's an older building where they did not install one of the extendable handles that are now available, or if it's one of those types that doesn't have the perimeter around that hatch. But getting out of the hatches, sometimes you're having to, you climb up the ladder and then you grab the top of the hatch and then you're stepping up and you don't have anything else to hold on to. So what we try and promote with our customers is to install those extension poles that you can put inside the hatch. You get to the top of the ladder and you can grab the handle and pull it up and it locks in place and it gives you something to hold on to when you climb up out of that hatch.
NIOSH Ladder App. Scan the QR code to download the NIOSH Ladder App. The app can help with planning, selection, inspection, setup, proper use, accessories. The app is only available on mobile devices, cell phones, tablets. Access to upper landing. When portable ladders are used for access to an upper landing, they need to have the side rails extended at least 3 feet above the upper landing. Do not place any weight on the rungs located above the upper landing when using non-self-supporting ladders to access an upper level. 4:1 ratio. Extension ladders need to be placed so that the working length of the ladder is 4 times the horizontal distance from the ladder's base to the structure, a 4:1 ratio. Ladder safety training. If you would like to learn more about ladders and how to use them safely, check out our online ladder safety training.
When it comes to loading or unloading materials on a residential project, for example, we typically have our supplier deliver the shingles up on the roof. They have the boom trucks, they load it up there, but we typically bring out all the underlayment, the metal flashings, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to getting those things up on the roof, we typically try to, hand them up if we can, because the underlayment's not heavy. We try to minimize what we can with the guys carrying stuff up the ladders and across the roofs. It's already a hard job, so we have our suppliers load the materials to the job. If we have a job where we can't get our supplier trucks into the house, we actually have a piece of equipment called a laddervator, and it is a gas-powered elevator that will take up the shingles up to the roof edge at least, and then the employees can grab those bundles and take them and stack them on the roof. When I first started roofing 25 years ago, you'd load bundles on your shoulder and carry them up the ladder and stack them. But luckily we've gotten away from that. So on commercial jobs, those are typically loaded with, again, the suppliers with the boom trucks. We do have scissor bed trucks as well that can lift up to 18 feet in the air to get stuff out on the roof if we need to. And we use those on residential jobs as well if we have to. So with fall protection, you have to have a rescue plan. Our company does have a rescue plan. First and foremost, somebody falls off the roof, somebody's calling 911. The crew then works to get a ladder to get a lift, whatever we need to do to get over to the person that has fallen, to be able to help them get picked up and get that pressure off their body, so then we can again get them disconnected and get them down to the ground, and medical personnel can check them out and make sure they're okay. So if we do have a situation where one of the workers falls off the roof, one of the first things that's going to happen is someone's going to call 911 while the rest of the crew is getting a ladder, getting the equipment needed to help that person. First thing is to assess the situation, make sure that the person is there, that they're not unconscious or something like that. But the crew is going to work together to call 911 to get rescue equipment in place, and then also to notify our office as well that we've had a situation, and we can get our management team out there as soon as possible. And rescue plans have to be modified depending on the situation of the roof that you're working on, whether you're just on a single-story residential home or if you're on a 4-story commercial complex. Typically, those situations are going to be so different. You're going to have different equipment at each one. That would facilitate being able to perform a rescue if needed.
We go through every single building to make sure we're not leaving anything behind, everything's in place, and we make a list, and if there's anything that we need to fix, we go back and take care of it before saying, okay, this is complete.
So one of the things that our company does is at the end of every job, each job is reviewed by our operations manager, and they go over that job with the estimator to make sure that, if there was anything missed or if there's any notes, the foreman will make notes in the job folder, whether it was materials, whether it was safety, whether it was something with the customer, just something that the estimator might have missed. So the foreman will actually make notes in that job folder. And then what we do is the operations manager and the estimator review the job, and then every week we have a foreman meeting, and in those foreman's meetings we talk about what happened on jobs the week before, something that a foreman might have seen that we then share with the other foreman. And then we also have our near miss reports that we share as well during all of our safety meetings. If there was, somebody slipped on an extension cord, somebody found a ladder that had a crack in it that, needed to be replaced. So those near miss reports are very important for our operations as well.
We do job site audits with our safety director, and I get to see those every single day. So I can know which crews are doing well, where we're having issues. Is it one particular employee, or is it a system that's broken that we're doing that we need to fix? And so by me viewing those every day, I have a pretty good handle on what we need to work on, and try to put together a plan to improve our safety within the crews and just our culture as a whole.
A safety plan and training go hand in hand. You can't have a safety plan if you don't have training. You can't do training if you don't have a safety plan. You have to have both. So when an employee first gets hired, you have to go over with that employee what the requirements are for safety. You at least have to give them a chance to show you what they know. And if they don't know it, then you have to train them. And so as part of our culture that we have, an employee gets hired, they immediately go through a fall protection training, going from requirements, this is the way the harness gets put on, this is what to look for in the rope when you hook the rope up, looking for any damage that may be done to the rope. But you can only train so much in-house. You have to do it out on the job. And so that's where our foremen finish that training and continue the training with employees, making sure that they're following that. So that training happens in the shop, and then it also happens out in the field. The training process that we have in place mostly occurs in-house. It starts at the employee hire date, going through the safety procedures and recognizing safety potential issues, helping them to feel comfortable in sharing that, which has been a huge hurdle to undertake, is getting people to feel comfortable in sharing when they see potential hazards, because they don't want to be seen as weak or afraid or anything like that. So really helping them to feel comfortable in recognizing issues that might be there that someone else might not see. So that training for us really starts with creating a culture of trust with our employees, and having that trust elevate to the point where they will share with us potential issues. The training for the removal of the equipment, the training for the inspection of the equipment, that is something that we've worked with OSHA particularly with. We've had their consultants come in and talk with our safety manager and talk with our shop manager to make sure that those inspections and those procedures for removing equipment are done properly, because I think it's very important to get their input on that, so that we're following the right procedures to do that as well. And as part of our training, we've actually started bringing in different manufacturers for the safety equipment to put on their safety demonstrations. And they bring in their truck and they bring in the weights and they drop the dummies and show how impactful a fall is, because most of the employees that we have doing the roofing are in, 18 to 30, 35 years old. They feel like they are indestructible, which is typical with that age group. And so it's nice to have those manufacturers bring that training into our shop, have the actual demonstrations of what can happen to a body when it falls 10 feet, and how that rope and harness and the lanyard work together to minimize the impact, but how much of an impact there still is. So getting that kind of training has been really beneficial for our company. It's not difficult to get manufacturers to come into your shop to do that. You just have to commit the time, and you have to commit to getting your employees there. You want to make sure that you have a good group, a good size of employees to make it worth their time. But even communicating with other companies that are around you and making it available to them, it's a good way to cross that barrier that sometimes contractors have with each other with competition, which I understand 100%. But when it comes to safety, you got to look out for everybody. And so that training is very important for everyone to receive.
So these are a couple of training boards that we have. We do these for a new hire orientation, as well as we'll bring them out during safety meetings and kind of run the guys through for some safety reminders on just their fall protection gear. So harnesses, ropes, those types of things, making sure that they understand when they're doing their inspections, kind of what they're looking for and real world examples. So I grabbed all of these props off of equipment that was no good and I confiscated, and then used this for training. So that's what we have here. Just a couple examples. This one, of course, right at the shock absorber end, kind of taking a look at that. So it's got some frayed rope to it, but also too, a big problem is the shock absorber. The plastic is starting to delam off of that and not provide full protection. So we have that. Some other things that you kind of notice here. One of our anchors, just making sure that they're all filled up with the screw or nail. So it kind of points that out. Vertical lifelines that they use for, their ropes. Here's frayed rope coming apart. So it might just be a little piece of that, but trying to get the guys to be really looking through this equipment for the inspections that they do before they get started. Another one that didn't show up real good is this. This clip is bent right here. If you just sort of look at it, it looks fine, but when you really do a good inspection, you see that. And so that's another one that we use as one of the training props to kind of help them with that. This one is the other one, just the last one. This D-ring, when you look at it flat, looks totally fine. But when you really start looking at it, you can see that it's bent up just a little bit, but still it shows that there's definitely been some force on that harness and it needs to go. So this one, you're like, oh, this looks fine. And I've seen this too, where the leg strap isn't really gone through the buckle, but actually just tied together. So this is one that they kind of took a little while to get. You can't do that, obviously. So anyway, that's one of the examples. Some of the ones is the ones that I've seen, in action and saying, hey guys, we got to pull that. And so then they'll see it show up on the training board. And they'll like, oh, that was mine. I know it's wrong right here. So that's kind of a fun way to get them interested too in the material. So all of these things, there's something wrong with each one of them, and it just helps the guys get an idea of real world inspections to see what's wrong or what could be wrong with their safety gear.
Absolutely. I expect everybody in my company to model, great safety habits. You lead by example, and that's anybody in our company. So everybody's watching, everybody sees, and especially from the top down when it comes to my role, to all supervisors and managers within our company, you gotta lead by example, because everybody's gonna look at you, and if you're doing things right, the employees watching you are gonna follow your lead. So, but that goes down to a guy that's a laborer within the company just packing garbage. He needs to be safe as well. Everybody has a responsibility to lead by example. Our safety policies and our requirements are expressed to our employees through safety meetings, which we have once a month. We have different topics. Fall protection is always addressed on what needs to be done, how we want it worn, anchors installed. And then also we do a safety shutdown once a year where a whole safety day, companies here. We have about 6 different stations and different safety professionals come in, and fall protection is always a big part of that in a whole station, just how to properly use it and what's the reasonings behind using it. And so we really put a lot of time and money into ensuring our guys really know it. It's not just teaching them when they're hired and doing our new hire training, safety training with them. It goes well beyond that. It's you want to do the follow-up training to ensure that the guys really understand it and aren't just nodding their head saying, yeah, I got it, I'm ready to go to work, I want a paycheck. No, it's serious in our company, and it's the culture that we were talking about. Is we want everybody to be safe, and we truly feel that way. And so following up training with those employees are very, very important to us.
Supervisors are very important in that they're thinking about how to get the job done efficiently, making sure the crews have everything that they need. But without focus on safety, then all of that planning can really be for nothing. So they do a really good job when they come up to the site, and that's the first thing they're looking for, is looking at the crew, making sure that everything is as safe as it can be. And that also helps us to really narrow that gap between what they've been trained to do and what they're actually doing. So the supervisors are the ones that can see that. So it's very key for the supervisors to be looking for safety each time they go to a job site. And if they see anything that's not where we want it to be for company standards and so forth, that they have that communication right away. And they talk about how things can be improved and be better for that crew to be safe. So, supervisors, I can't say enough about them and what a good job that they're doing, but it's critical that they are fully engaged in the safety of their crews, and also too thinking about the customer as well, and also a big picture for the crew's families.
Training certification. In regard to certification of training, the employer must prepare a written certification record. This record needs to have the name of the employee trained, dates of the training, and the signature of the person who conducted the training or the employer. Once all of this is completed, you need to maintain the latest training certification. In some instances, the employee may have received training from a previous employer. If this is the case, the record needs to indicate when the current employer determined the prior training was adequate, rather than the date of the actual training. Retraining. When the employer has a reason to believe that an employee who has already been trained doesn't have the required knowledge or skills, they need to retrain the employee. Examples where retraining is required include changes in the workplace or fall protection systems being used has made the previous training obsolete. It is evident that the employee has not retained the necessary knowledge and skills from the training. Training requirements. Before any employee is exposed to a fall hazard, the employer must provide training for each employee who uses personal fall protection systems or who is required to be trained as specified by Oregon OSHA. Additional resources. There are many places to get training resources. We have provided a list of a few companies that provide training materials.
So at Pressure Point Roofing, the culture of safety that has taken years to develop is one that we find important because we find that it provides our employees a more secure feeling of safety. working in a very dangerous field. It's not a job that you can take lightly because it can happen that fast where you're on the ground. I've been roofing since I was 15 years old, and some of the safety things we did when I was 15 years old would not have qualified as safety. But the culture is completely different than what it used to be. It used to be you did what you had to do to get the job done, even if it was just tying an air hose around your ankle and your buddy lowering you down to get the job done. Fortunately, in today's world, the safety equipment has gotten to be a lot better. It's gotten to be a lot easier to use. It's a lot lighter. It's not as cumbersome. There's more options to choose from. And so really getting our employees to buy in on safety has been beneficial for our company in that we have very, very low modification ratings with our workman's comp policies because we don't have very many injuries, knock on wood. So we have found that it's improved just the overall how long guys can keep working, how long the crews can keep working, and how long the employees can stay doing what they do because they don't have the injuries that used to be so dominant in the roofing industry. So if you're a person that is in this industry or looking to get into the industry, safety starts with you first. You have to start with yourself. So if you are working with a company that hasn't embraced a safety culture, hasn't taken the steps to really get into this, take the steps yourself first. Show that initiative. Show that you can wear a harness, show that you can wear a rope and harness, that you can perform the job just as well as anybody else. That is where it starts. You have to do it yourself. If you get to a job site and you see the ladder's not tied off, grab a rope out of the truck, climb up there, tie it off. It starts with one person doing it. And then as far as you continue to grow and as you continue to learn, and as you set the example for other people, it makes it easier for them to buy in. And the same thing is true on the business owner side. If the business owner hasn't bought into safety, hasn't bought into making sure that the employees are doing what they're supposed to do, employees aren't going to do it either. The employer has to set the standard for what's going to happen in that company. As our company grew, I brought on more management, and that management, one of the first things we talk about is safety, 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 safety. It has to start with the owner. It has to start with the employee being responsible for themselves. Between those two, if you do that, then your company can start to embrace that safety culture and start to follow those policies and procedures that help everybody get home. So in order to get where Pressure Point is today, as far as our safety program, has taken years to get to. Unfortunately, when we went through many visits with OSHA and we went through many citations and working our way through that, it wasn't because we didn't want to be compliant. It's just, again, teaching employees and getting employees to buy into that culture of safety takes a long time. And again, when you're working with employees that are on average 18 to 30 years old, they just got out of high school. They don't want to be told what to do a lot of times. And they feel safe working on a roof. They feel safe walking around. They don't feel like they're going to fall off. It just takes time and it takes a constant effort to get your company to be safety conscious and not only safety conscious and following the OSHA rules, but looking for ways to improve on what the rule is. And so the rule is the minimum standard. What we're trying to do is we're trying to be better than the minimum standard, whether it's on the install or whether it's being safe. We want to be above that minimum standard. So getting employees to buy into that, the near miss reports, communicating with other foremen as to what they found a problem. If we have an employee that's constantly having to be told, put your harness on, that's not an employee we typically want to have around, because we want someone who's going to buy into that program of safety. So it helps the crew, it helps the company, it helps everyone to be better. So in order to follow up on the safety procedures to make sure that they're being done, you have to basically enforce them. You have to go out to the job sites. You have to check in on the employees to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. You have to have a penalty phase, basically. If they're not following the rules, aside from OSHA's enforcement policies, you have to have your own enforcement policies within the company, and you have to follow them, because if you don't, everybody's gonna know that it doesn't matter. So you have to have an enforcement policy in place. And the way we do our enforcement policy is it's a graduated. First time it's a verbal, second time it's written, third time it's written with possible suspension. And depending on the severity of the infraction, it could be termination with the first time we see it. You have to have an enforcement team in your company to be able to follow up on those procedures to make sure that everybody is doing the minimum that's required. But I think that's where the enforcement and that trust, knowing that something will happen if somebody's not following the procedures, but then also knowing that they can tell us something without getting in trouble, is helpful in getting them to share more of what they see out in the field. So as far as the industry, it has been beneficial in that it's opened up careers for people rather than just roofing for a little while. There's not too many people that I know that are a little older that didn't say they at least tried roofing once. I did it for a little while, I did it for a summer. Well, now you have it as a legitimate trade that people are staying in for years because of the safety improvements and the buying into the safety. I know the steel industry, the steel workers and things like that have always been real big on safety because of the weight and because of things working above their head all the time. Roofing has always been a little bit different because we are typically above that and we're not worried about things falling on us. The only thing we have to worry about is falling off. But with the culture of safety and with the regulations came first before the buy-in happened. It just did. And it's taken a while to get employees to buy in to the purpose of safety and why we feel it's so important. And as an owner, I take a lot of pride in knowing that my employees are buying into that culture of safety. They are taking the time to set up the fall protection. They are taking the time to check their ropes and harnesses, and they are talking to each other and saying, hey, I need you to put your harness on. I need you to put your rope on, because I don't want to have to call your wife and kids and say, Joey fell off the roof today. I'm sorry, but he's paralyzed. I never want to get that call. And so the fact that we have a multitude of options as far as safety for people to choose from and for our employees to use, to train, to teach, and help others enables us to get more employees and enables us to get employees that are committed to safety and committed to doing a good job and providing a service to the public that not many people do. And so roofing is a very difficult trade to work in. It's hot, it's dirty, but you can look back and say, I did that job and take a lot of pride in it. Our employees are doing a good job, they're installing the roofs properly, they're doing it correctly, and they're going home and they're coming back the next morning to do it again. So that's the culture of safety that we are really trying to embody in our company.
Thank you for taking the time to learn about fall protection for roofing. We hope it has been beneficial to your understanding of fall hazards and the solutions that are available to keep you safe. If you have any questions about fall protection, feel free to contact our consultants at 1-800-922-2689. If you have any questions about this course, please call 503-947-7443 or email us at ed.web@oregon.gov. If you would like additional educational materials, we have a number of fall protection resources on our website. This includes fact sheets, brochures, upcoming workshops, and our PESO program, which is a collection of bilingual job safety and health trainings. Additionally, for your convenience, we have uploaded the videos from this course to YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search up Oregon OSHA. This will allow you to watch them individually or use them as supplementary materials in your fall protection training. Thank you again for taking fall protection for roofing.